Y'all should see Brad.
Yeah, you should see me. I was boogieing before, right? Well, according to a new regulation that was just published in the Federal Register, and you may remember from watching our shows in the past when we always talk about regulations, you have to publish it, give a public comment period. So actually, President Biden, in this particular instance, on the public charge provisions, is actually following the regulations.
Okay.
He is making a regulation. He is now asking the public to comment on it. He will then take those comments over the next 60 days into consideration and will be making a final rule about public charge, rolling back completely what Donald Trump did during his presidency. Donald Trump, remember, added special immigration forms and said if there was any chance at all that you would become a public charge, your case would be denied. Mm-hmm. Now, under President Biden, he says that is un-American, and they're only now, based on this new rule, it's not law yet, but will be shortly, based on this new rule, people who are in public housing, such as Section 8, people who are getting SNAP, people who are getting Medicaid, that will not count against you for public charge. So unless you're actually getting a cash benefit, now none of this is cash benefits. These are just either vouchers or lower payments that you would make otherwise, such as in Section 8 housing. SNAP is food vouchers. Medicaid is that the government's paying for your medical expenses. Those are all non-cash layouts to somebody. So if it's a non-cash layout to you, based on these new rules, that would not prevent you from getting your green card. I don't know how many calls on our show that we have. The hardest one that people were having trouble with was Section 8, especially in people who are living in densely populated urban areas where the rents are very, very high, and sometimes your income can't afford to pay the rent.
Right.
All right, the rent was too damn high. There was even a guy
that was
who ran for mayor of New York.
Yeah.
Remember, he was the rent's too damn high party. He had no solution to it.
He got a lot of votes.
He had no solution to it. He was just saying what the
people
Jimmy
wanted.
McMillan, right?
Yeah.
He was just posing the problem. The rent's too damn high, and people were like, "Yeah, you're right. The rent's too damn high."
I remember
but he didn't get any votes. But sometimes the rent's too damn high, and you have to get. And you're working in a job, and you're well above the poverty guidelines. Okay, it's not like you're living in poverty, but the rent's too damn high.
Yeah.
So you apply for Section 8. Under Trump, and even under Biden, under Biden, Section 8 could be taken into. Under Obama, Section 8 could be taken into consideration as in the totality of circumstances of whether or not in the future you're going to become a public charge. Under Trump, if you were in Section 8, forget it.
Right.
Remember, negative points against you.
Yes.
Now, under Biden, Section 8 housing under this new rule is not going, if your spouse is in Section 8 housing, it's not going to prevent you from getting your green card. People in Section 8 housing who are just filing their adjustment applications now, by the time you get your interview, be a year from now, this rule will be into effect.
Okay.
So anybody who's filing their adjustment applications at this moment is going to have the new rule in effect by the time they show up to their interview.
Well, that's a good thing.
Which is all that really is, which is really important.
Right.
We have this 60-day comment period, and then thereafter, we will have this new rule. So it's going to be very few, with few exceptions. Medicaid will be okay. SNAP will be okay.
Wow.
Section 8 will be okay.
That's good.
Yeah. The Biden administration is changing course by considering what public benefits would indicate that an individual, this is their theory, what public benefits would indicate that an individual is largely depending on the federal government, and they're going to exclude benefits like food assistance, housing, like we just talked about. Under the new program, the Department of Homeland Security is only going to consider benefits like cash assistance, such as temporary assistance for needy families program. Now, Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas said in a statement that the 2019 public charge rule was not consistent with our nation's values. Under this proposed rule, we will turn to the historical understanding of what a public charge is. and individuals will not be penalized for choosing access to health care or getting sick.
Right.
People will not have to choose between having a roof over their head and getting a green card.
Yeah.
That is not what the United States is all about. So that's good news.
That's great news.
I think that's fantastic.
Because I remember that we do get questions about that all the time. Like, is this going to be a problem because I'm on Section 8 or I have SNAP? It's like you're just trying to feed your family and live at the same time.
And by the way, I see that congressional Democrats are calling on Biden to review the disparate and often inhumane treatment of black migrants. Yes, in a recent letter, more than 100 congressional Democrats have urged President Biden to review the disparate treatment of black migrants, specifically Haitians.
I was about to say.
Specifically Haitians at the border, but it could be almost anybody who's dark-skinned.
Right.
It's time to undo this letter signed by 100 congressional Democrats. I'm quoting, "It's time to undo the United States' draconian immigration policies, particularly policies introduced under the Trump administration, such as the use of Title 42 that circumvent our humanitarian obligations." Title 42, Yo-Yo, that was the law that allows the President of the United States to exclude huge groups of people if there is a possibility that they came from an area that could cause a public health emergency in the United States. And what Donald Trump said was anybody who is in the country of Mexico can cause a public health problem in the United States because potentially they could have COVID. And as a result of that, anybody who was in Mexico who applied for asylum got turned around immediately at the border.
Wow.
Now, under the Title 42 rules, it was only supposed to be Mexicans, Guatemalans, El Salvadorans, but they included everybody, including Haitians. And you may remember those pictures of people who were trying to apply for asylum, and they had the horses with the whips, and those were mostly Haitians who were trying to cross the border. They were all basically fell under Title 42. You come from an area that has COVID. We're not even going to accept your asylum application. And by the way, there was one exception to the rule, to this law. But how would anybody know what this one exception is? If you yell at the moment when you cut to, literally, it would have to be contemporaneously with the U.S. government removing you because you came from a country with COVID. So we're not going to allow you to apply for asylum. You would have to contemporaneously yell, "I will be tortured if I return to my country," which is different than asylum, that I fear persecution. You could say I'm applying for asylum, and that's what most people think to say.
Right.
Turned around. You had to use the words, "I will be tortured."
Wow.
And who knows to say that?
Right.
So, tens and tens and tens, maybe hundreds of thousands of people were denied basic asylum interviews because of Title 42. The letter also underscored recent frustrations with the Biden administration over Title 42's public health order, which was invoked by the Trump administration at the onset, which is what we talked about. It deprives legitimate asylum seekers the opportunity to pursue their claims. Further into the letter, the Democrats argue that Title 42 has no basis in public health. Do you think it prevented having these people who are escaping for their lives saying you can't come in? That prevented people from getting COVID in the United States of America?
No.
No.
Absolutely not.
Okay. No. There was a super spreader event.
Right.
Okay, all over the place.
I think that would be worse.
Okay.
The festivals and all that.
At festivals, at the bike rallies in South Dakota or North Dakota, whatever that was. I don't think a poor person trying to escape persecution was making a super spreader event in the United States of America. So the letter says that the Title 42 order had no basis in public health, and the CDC is allowing itself to be used to justify mass expulsions of asylum seekers in violation of U.S. and international refugee law to harm's way. All right, and happy President's Day. Yeah. For many Americans, President's Day is a holiday and a time of many retail sales, but it's not, and having a 3-day vacation. But I think President Biden is up to his neck in stress
Yikes.
on this President's Day. With he's not relaxing with a looming Russian invasion of Ukraine, potentially setting off a world war.
Yeah.
Literally.
That's so scary.
A new Supreme Court justice to appoint, and inflation taxing everybody. But, President's Day is also a time to think about the awesome power of the U.S. president over immigration. President Trump, as we talked about, exercises immigration powers in a very bad way.
Right.
And President Biden is obviously moving in a different direction. And although there were no immigration laws at the time, we're celebrating George Washington's birthday, Abraham Lincoln's birthday. The first U.S. President, George Washington, reportedly spoke very fondly of the new nation providing asylum for people in the world in a 1788 letter to Francis Adrian Vanderkemp, a persecuted Dutch preacher. President Washington invited him to immigrate with his flock to the United States. He quoting President Washington, "I'd always hoped that this land might become a safe and agreeable asylum to the virtuous and persecuted part of mankind, to whatever nation they may belong." And of course, President Abraham Lincoln was very open to immigration, consistently opposing the Know Nothing Party. Do you know there was a Know Nothing Party?
No.
Yes, there was a party. It was called the Know Nothing Party in the United States in the mid-1800s.
Okay.
Similar to the Republican Party now, except the Republicans call themselves Republicans. Not the Know Nothings.
Right.
But I would say the Republicans are also Know Nothings. They were a very nativist party. They were more of a white supremacist party. They were against immigrants. They were in favor of slavery. And President Abraham Lincoln obviously opposed the Know Nothing Party and enthusiastically enlisted hundreds of thousands of immigrants into the Union Army to fight the Civil War. The American Know Nothing Party was actually an anti-immigrant party. And Abraham Lincoln, in a writing in 1855, he wrote, "I am not a know-nothing. As a nation, we begin by declaring that all men are created equal. We now practically read it, all men are created equal except Negroes. When the know-nothings get control, it will read, all men are created equal except Negroes and foreigners and Catholics." And so basically it's a slippery slope, by the way.
Right.
And when it comes to this, I should prefer immigrating to some country where they make no pretense of loving liberty, like Russia, for instance, where despotism can be taken pure and without any hypocrisy. So Abraham Lincoln saying, you know what, I'd rather live in Russia, where at least they don't make any pretense of discriminating against people,
Right.
versus here where we say, life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness for all, except if you're a Negro.
For you, a Negro,
or a
foreigner, or a Catholic.
Right. He probably put Jewish in there too,
Right,
but
yeah,
he didn't write it, but probably that too, in the mid-1800s. And of course, the scariest thing that's going on in the world right now is what's happening in the Ukraine. It potentially can be World War III. President Putin is blaming the United States of America today for causing all of these problems, because the United States of America has assisted financially and militarily Ukraine to become a democratic country. They had a free democratic election, and Russia doesn't like that,
Right.
because Ukraine is right next to Russia.
It's not Russia, though.
And
It's
I'm sorry. President Putin says Ukraine is Russia. In a meeting with the Russian Security Council, President Putin signed decrees recognizing two controversial separatist-held regions of Ukraine as being part of Russia. In response, the White House said in a statement that President Biden would sign an executive order that would prohibit new investment, trade, and financing by the United States. White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki wrote in a statement, to be clear, these measures are separate and would be in addition to SWIFT sanctions. So far, these sanctions that President Biden, it's just like a backwards slap on the butt.
Right.
He's got to get a little tougher, I think. We'll see what happens. President Putin went on television in Russia tonight and had a very strongly worded speech that Ukraine is part of Russia.
Yeah.
So he disagrees with you. Jonathan.
Okay.
And President Biden said he would meet with Putin, but only if they could actually come to an agreement. And right now they can't come to any agreement whatsoever. Putin, as of when we were coming live on to the show, Russia started to invade Ukraine, but only into the separatist regions. There's two areas in Ukraine that border Russia, in which there's a separatist army trying to overthrow the democratically elected Ukrainian government, at least in that portion of Ukraine. Most of the people in that portion of these two separatist enclaves are Russian speakers, but historically part of the country of Ukraine, not part of, ultimately, Russia. President Putin is trying to recreate Russia as a great superpower alongside China and the United States of America. He wants his sphere of influence in Eastern Europe. He is almost 70 years old, so he wants to, at least in his mind, wants to go down in history as having made Russia a great power again.
That's what it sounds like. It's
Yes.
like trying to leave a legacy. Just
Correct. The United States has written to the top United Nations human rights officials that it has credible information that Russian forces are identifying Ukrainians to be killed or sent to concentration camps. If it further invades Ukraine and occupies it. Today, the Kremlin denied those claims. And, it was a very interesting article in the New York Times yesterday that I read, Jonathan, by David Leonhardt. And he said, why is this a little different than other wars? Number one, this is going to be a Russian invasion of Ukraine. It would involve one of the world's largest militaries launching an unprovoked ground invasion to a neighboring country. And we have not seen an unprovoked ground operation into another country since the end of World War II.
oh wow.
You can argue the United States went and overthrew Panama, Ortega. Maybe that was unprovoked. Maybe. You can perhaps argue Iraq, perhaps, but they were claiming, terrorists, 9/11.
Right. That's what I was about to say.
Right.
I felt like
So it wasn't completely unprovoked. But this is unprovoked.
yeah.
This is one country asserting its dominance over its neighbor. And the goal in Russia invading Ukraine is to expand its dominance, just annex other countries. We haven't seen this in 100 years. It's a voluntary war of aggression. Now, political scientists have also warned for several years that democracy is in decline. And this is also democracy in decline. Here is an authoritarian government. There hasn't been a free election in Russia in 25 years. He's an authoritarian, and he's going to invade a democratically elected country and make it an authoritarian regime. That's what's going to happen. And right now the world's going to allow him to do it because the United States does not want to get into World War III.
Right.
But, by the way, just so you know, how did World War II start? World War II started with Hitler trying to show his dominance over Poland. And then he got scared and tried to annex Austria. Okay? Then he got scared that, maybe that the British won't like this. And instead of waiting for Britain to respond, he went on the offensive against Britain because he felt Germany wouldn't be able to beat Britain in a war if he waited for Britain to attack them first. What happens here if Russia invades Ukraine? And now they're concerned the United States is going to respond. Are they going to become more aggressive to say, we got to respond first?
Right.
That's how World War II started.
So it's like whoever acts first. It's kind of like
It's like being in a street fight and saying, you know what? I'm going to hit you before you hit me.
Before you hit me.
Right, because I'm going to sock you. That's how World War II started.
That makes sense. Yeah.
So it's scary because he's going to invade Ukraine and he's going to say, what is the United States going to do about this? Maybe we should go attack them because Russia knows, Putin knows, outside of nuclear weapons, hopefully nuclear weapons never happen, but in a conventional war, the United States would destroy Russia, at all of NATO. Without even NATO, the United States would destroy Russia, just because of the U.S. air superiority. Okay, the United States has air superiority over Russia. They can fly F-15s all over Russia all day long, okay, without even any nuclear weapons. Add Britain, France, Germany, Russia loses.
Right. And I wonder if that's so. Like I was reading, I know
very
that
scary.
It is. I was reading that Putin had ordered the Russian troops to maintain peace. What is that?
That is an excuse to go in.
Yeah.
To the Ukrainian enclaves. So there's two enclaves in Ukraine that has a separatist movement. Okay, Ukraine says they are terrorists. One man's terrorist is another man's freedom fighter. Russia says they're freedom fighters. So now Russia is saying we have to move in to these areas to protect our freedom fighters who are fighting for Russia. That's what they're saying. And that's how they're using the excuse to go to war.
Okay.
But they're basically invading.
That's exactly what they're doing.
They are invading a democratically elected country.
Yeah.
And saying it belongs to us. We're going to have to get to Trump and his children tomorrow. It's already 10 after 7. But I did want to talk about coronavirus. 49 out of 50 states don't have mask requirements anymore.
49?
49 as of today, 49 out of 50 states have no more mask requirements.
What's the one state that does?
Hawaii.
Yes.
Yet over 75%.
The furthest one away from all of us.
Yet 75% of Hawaiians have received 2 doses. Well, if you're in Hawaii, you're not the furthest. I mean, furthest from us, the two of us right here in New York. They've taken very strong precautions. Although 75% of Hawaiians have the COVID vaccine. Governor David Ige told ABC4 local TV that he's working with the state's health department to determine when the right time for Hawaii to lift its indoor mask mandate. Hawaii ranks second to last in the nation when it comes to COVID deaths. We base our decision on science. I think it's time to lift it, Governor.
Yeah.
And today, international tourists and business travelers began to arrive in Australia for the first time in 2.5 years.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
They just opened?
They just opened, bringing tearful family reunions after separations of 2 years or longer, forced by the strictest pandemic measures in the world, maybe Australia, New Zealand. Australia closed its borders to tourists in March of 2020.
Wow. And it just now opened.
Just now opened.
Ooh.
Yes. And by the way, enforcement of New York's COVID-19 booster shot mandates for medical workers was supposed to take effect today, but it's going to be delayed at least 3 months amid concerns it would trigger staffing shortages. So although if you're a medical worker in New York and you don't have your COVID vaccine, you will be fired. New York's giving you 90 more days because they got to hire replacements.
Wow.
Yes. And here's some good news. There's been a lot of new science studies that suggest that 3 doses of a COVID vaccine, and sometimes even 2, is going to be enough to protect people from serious illness and death for a very long time. So now scientists are coming to the conclusion that we may not need that 4th booster for years and years and years to come. John Weary, a director of the Institute for Immunology at the University of Pennsylvania, said, "We're starting to see diminishing returns on the number of additional doses. Maybe people over 65, people at severe risk of illness may benefit from a 4th vaccine dose, but otherwise, in the general population, the 2 doses plus the booster, or your J&J plus the booster, is going to be enough to protect you, not from getting COVID, but will be enough to protect you from not getting sick enough to go to the hospital." And the reason they say that is, I'm not a medical doctor, although I like to play one every so often. I'm a juris doctor, not a medical doctor. But what the scientists are saying is that they've been looking at the wrong immunological response to the vaccines. And originally they were looking at the antibody response. You talk about how many antibodies do you have, and the antibodies are things that fight off the vaccine, fight off the coronavirus. And what scientists are saying now is that after 4, 5, 6 months, the antibodies recede, and that's why people were concerned. What do we have to take a booster every 6 months? That's crazy. And what they said is what we didn't look at is apparently there's some other cells that work even stronger than antibodies, T cells and something else. I forgot what it was called. But these T cells and V cells, T cells and B as in boy, T cells and B cells.
The dual punch.
Right. They work in your body for years and years and years, protecting you against any COVID variant that may come.
Okay.
So they are confident now, although it may change in the future, you never know. But at the moment, they are very confident that the general population is going to be 2 shots and a booster and done.
That's good.
Yes. Let's get to some Fuzzy Monday.
Let's do it.
Let's do it. All right, so beginning today, a series of winter storms are going to impact northern part of the United States, mainly from the northern plains to the Great Lakes. And the weather prediction is describing this as a significant winter storm. As of this morning, nearly 25 million people are under some sort of winter storm alert. WPC said a mixture of snow, sleet, and freezing rain may come in 2 waves. So to get everyone in the storm's path who is dreading the snow, we present you with some fun images of animals who can't get enough of the snow as a reminder of how enjoyable it is to be snowed on.
I actually like it.
Let's see. We have some examples of dogs, buffaloes, polar bears, all loving the snow. So for all of you who are getting snowed on right now, let's look at our pictures. There it is.
There you go.
Happy dogs playing in the snow. What else we got there, Ian? Let's go through all the pictures. The polar bears are happy in the snow. Who else is happy in the snow, Ian?
Buffalo.
A buffalo happy in the snow.
See?
There you go. Who else we got? Anybody else? Who's that? What is
It's
that?
a buffalo.
Is that a buffalo also?
Yeah.
I mean, he's in the snow.
There
Come
we
on.
go.
Lots of fuzzy animals love the sno. So while you're miserable in the snow, just think about how happy
There you go.
all the fuzzy animals are going to be. All right. And by the way, this is a story about a guy who shared his car with an enormous spider for the past year. I would have been selling that car. Let's see what happens.
What?
Yeah. These days, even when Christopher Taylor appears to be by himself out and about in Australia, he's never alone in his car, Jonathan. Turns out for the last year or so, Taylor's been sharing his vehicle with an unlikely co-pilot.
That's ridiculous.
This enormous spider.
That's crazy.
Taylor told LAD
Look
Bible
at that.
she just appeared one day about a year ago on the dashboard when I stopped at the light. Taylor said that over the many months together, Steve, that's what she calls the name of the spider, he's doubled in size. And while Taylor may have grown used to Steve's harmless presence in the car over the last year, she continues to leave a big impression on those who have not met Steve yet. When I have passengers in my car, they're often startled or scream,
hell no.
"Spider, spider!" But Steve is great at keeping me alert when I drive. There may come a time, of course, when Steve decides to move back outdoors or perhaps upgrade to a newer model car. But at the present time, Steve and this lady, Christopher Taylor, are sharing the car for 1 full year. It's a woman, it's a man. He wouldn't get rid of this spider.
I mean, it kind of reminds me. I grew up watching Charlotte's Web. So it kind of reminds me of that.
A little bit.
It's a little. It's your friend.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Charlotte was a cute little spider.
Yeah.
This thing looks ugly.
And then look, Charlotte actually webbed terrific.
Is this spider making anything?
I don't know. And look at Charlotte's eyes.
Now I'm not a spider expert, but I remember in Charlotte's Web that Charlotte dies at the end of the year because spiders only last about a year.
That actually was really sad for me as a child.
I think that Steve's got about a year to
Yeah. Well,
Steve's probably in old age already. Steve the spider.
Oh. Yeah, but that thing's way too big. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
How's Steve eating?
I don't know. How does spiders eat? I don't know. All right, so we have two more. Do you want me to do one in the left or right hand?
Left hand.
Left hand. Britney Spears.
Oh, yes.
Is welcomed a new dog on February 16th. The superstar shared a video on social media of her newest addition, Sawyer, an Australian Shepherd. Spears shared an Instagram video of.
Gosh.
Oh, that's a cute dog.
That is a cute and a rich dog, y'all.
Yo, that's a very rich dog. Spears posted, geez, can you have two loves of your lives? Because he comes in second. I found him in Maui like a dream and took him home with me and immediately. It's funny. He doesn't talk back, but it's like he understands what I'm saying.
Oh.
Yeah, so apparently Britney Spears talks dog.
Yeah.
Yeah, lots of people talk dog.
A lot of people do. That is a really
That's
cute
a very
dog.
cute dog. Looks like her. But if you put a lot of fuzz on Britney Spears' face,
oh my God,
this dog looks like her. With blue contact
right.
lenses.
That's
All
a cute
right,
dog.
so that's our fuzzy Monday, yo.
All right.